Welcome to Rick Rack Ruby. Today we will be using honey bun strips to create this Christmas stocking ornament. It's fun and easy, so let's get started. The Christmas Stitched Fabric collection includes this sort of a sampler print that features the verses to The Night Before Christmas. And I thought that it would be very fun to use this image as the cuff on a stocking ornament. It just seems like it's the right scale and the right dimensions. So the first half of each line is in one square, and then the second half would be in another square. So stockings were hung by a chimney with care in hopes that St. Nicholas soon would be there. But there are some limitations here because, for instance, this little strip here in between, it doesn't give you a lot of seam allowance. So sometimes that'll be at the bottom, sometimes it'll be at the top, and I just want you to be aware of that. So I have all the space in the world up here above this part, and I even have space below, but in between there's only little. So here's an example. Here I've cut out "'Twas the Night Before Christmas" and all through the house. Not very much seam allowance. And this one is on the same line. So not a creature restoring, not even a mouse. But then the one I want to use is the one about the stockings. Stockings were hung by the chimney with care in hopes that St. Nicholas soon would be there. So I'm going to cut these out very carefully, providing as much seam allowance as I can, sort of fussy cutting, and we'll see how it goes. Here they are cut out, and you can also see that this is 2 3/4. Here we go. Yeah, 2 3/4 wide, almost 3, and this one is just 2 1/2. And so we're going to work with those limitations, which of course I love. And I've designed a pattern. Okay, so the cuff takes up a lot of room, and then the toe takes up a lot of room, but we still want to have fun with our piecing, and so I wanted to leave enough room to have fun with our piecing. We're going to use these honey bun strips for piecing in between, and so I wanted to, design a pattern that would be sort of proportionate. So we wind up with a long, thin shape. Here we go. So this is about 9 1/4 total. But of course, when we take our seam allowance, it'll be even thinner and a little bit shorter. And it's 3 inches across. So 3 inches, 3 inches, 3 inches, all the way to about here for about 5 inches, just 3 by 5, just the size of an index card. And then we're gonna swoop out a little bit. That's about, the widest would be from here to here would be 4 inches. So I would start with a piece of graph paper that was 4 inches wide and 9 1/4 tall. And you don't have to make it exactly like mine, just approximately. And just shape this a gentle curve. That's the whole secret to cutting out a stocking, is not to make it go too strong of an angle here, just a gentle curve. Because once you go and take that seam allowance, it'll be great. It'll look awesome. So I've cut this shape from my 50 weight Pellon interfacing. I'm going to call this my stabilizer. It doesn't have to be that heavy, but this is just what I have, is 50 weight. You don't want fusible. Now bear in mind that this is the cuff, will be here. I'm going to make sure that I put that right on the edge because I want all the seam allowance that I can possibly get. I'm just pinning this just for my eye. I'm gonna, unpin it and repin it later on when I get to actually piecing this. And then I wanna make sure that I can see the whole verse. So edge to edge, and I think I'm a little off the bottom here. I'm a little off the bottom, but I wanna just make sure that I can read this in hopes that St. Nicholas soon will be there. And I'm a little close on this side. So I'm going to be very careful. I'm going to pin it and I'm going to flip it and check, kind of hold it up to the light. Here's where I'm really close, is that W. I think there is a 1/4 inch seam allowance. I think I'll be okay, but I might cut off the very edge of it. But if I move it any further, I'm going to be off the stabilizer. I'll try to move it a teeny tiny bit. No, I'm afraid I'll be off the stabilizer, and I don't want that. So I just hope that my seam allowance will, I'll be very careful with that. So now we're going to begin piecing. I'm going to use these honey bun strips. I'm going to start with something light. I think this one. I'm just going to set it face down, straight across, and then flip it up and press it flat. That's the way I'm going to start. I'm going to work from the bottom to the top. This angle is hard to get just right if you work from the top to the bottom, whereas this angle is just, you know, 90 degrees. It's not that hard. It's even with the top edge of the pattern. So we're going to start at the bottom. We're going to piece, 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 piece all the way up to the top, and then we'll do the cuff. So start with something light. I like a contrast to the red, so I think this one will work. And I'm going to use a scant 1/4 inch seam allowance. Here's how it looks, and then I'm going to flip it and press it. And now I will trim off these edges so that I can kind of see the shape. Now my next strip, I'll use this one. And because I'm working to this inner curve, I'm going to do the short sides of the triangle. So here, in other words, we're going to do it like this. So the inner part of the curve is going to be short, and the outer is going to be tall or long or wide. So I'll set it like this and then stitch and flip. So there's the triangle, pointy at the inner curve. And set it from here to here. Oh, there's another tip, is to always cut the strip a little bit longer than you think you need, because if you put it right here, you can be caught short when you flip it. So just always cut it a little bit wider. From here to here. Scant 1/4 inch seam allowance, and I will be right back. Now before I flip and press, I'm going to trim out this extra print. I don't usually backstitch when I'm sewing these because I make so many mistakes. A lot of times I'll have to remove the seam. So I will flip and press. And now I'll trim these even with the stabilizer. And add my next strip. I'll use the red gingham next, and once again I want this to be the point and this to be the wider end. So I will place it like this, so when I flip it I will have that point. Now before I flip and press, I'm going to trim this out. I trim these just so they won't show, they won't, you know, shadow through a lighter fabric. And then I'll flip and press. Now I'll add one more in the same way. This is the fat end of the triangle and this will be the point. So I'll have 3 points here. And then we're going to do something different. Here's how this looks. Now my next strip is going to be a little bit different. I'm going to place this edge here, but I'm going to try to keep it a little bit more of this 90-degree angle. Is that right? 90 degree? Anyway, I want it to be parallel with the bottom of the cuff. So this way the point is going this way. Does that make sense? It doesn't have to be exactly perfect, but we're just sort of headed in that direction. Like that. I trimmed out the excess fabric there, and now flip this up. I'm having a look, it looks good. I'm going to press this and I'll be right back. This print has little houses on it, so it is directional, and I want to make sure that I place this upside down, right sides together, so that when I flip it up, it'll be right side up. Now I'll flip it up and I'll trim those sides. And then I'll place this right sides together and flip this up. And like I say, I might be a little bit short here and I might wind up trimming off the top. This is why we design it this way instead of being short at the bottom. That's why we work from the bottom to the top, but maybe I'll make it, we'll see. There we go, all of my piecing is complete, and I do have a little bit of extra foundation at the very top, but I'm not worried about that right now. First, I'm going to flip this over. I'm just going to top stitch very close to the edge all the way around, and then I'm going to give it a nice trim. There we go. Now you can really see what the stocking's going to look like. I top stitched around the edge and I did cut off a little sliver from the top, but it wasn't very much. The next thing I want to do is just add a little row of lace. I've just, it's been fun adding a little bit of my vintage lace to this collection. So I'm going to count out 3 of these little scallops and try to center it, and I'll just top stitch it with my machine. Maybe zigzag. I think I'll zigzag right over that header, just like that. I want to be sure I have the right side on the top, and then trying to decide, I think I'm going to place it just below the seam so that the whole thing is on the green, like that, and then I'll do a little baby zigzag right across the header. I think that'll work. There we go. I also added, I continued the zigzag down on the sides of the lace to sort of secure it. And it's not totally perfectly centered. I feel like there's a little more on this side, but I think once it's sewn up, it's going to look just great. Now I'm going to do decorative stitching in emerald. There's really no emerald in the collection, and so by adding the emerald in the stitching, it really enlivens the whole look of the front of the stocking. I'm going to do a variety of stitches. I have like a feather stitch, a buttonhole stitch, a zigzag, and then I have a sort of embroidered leaf that I'm going to use. I'm just going to run them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 rows of decorative stitching. And you'll see it really makes a big difference in the appearance of the front of the stocking. The decorative stitching is complete. I did this triple zigzag here and here, the feather stitch here and here. This is like a blanket stitch, and this is that little embroidered stem and leaves. And I did switch to this open-toed foot. For my Bernina, it's the 20, but you know, whatever you have. When you use this, you can just see a little better. It's nice to get the center of the stitch lined up right on the seam. Anyway, now we're almost done. All we have to do is finish it. So here are the 2 linings and the back that I cut out to begin. One lining faces left and one lining faces right, and then the back faces to the left. So I'll take one lining piece. Oh, and remember that I trimmed a tiny bit off the top. Let's see how much of a difference there is. Looks like it's less than 1/4 of an inch, maybe 1/8 of an inch, but I will go ahead and trim that even. There we go. So now I'll take the completed stocking front and one lining piece. I'm going to choose the lining that goes right sides together with the front, and then I'll pin them across the top like this. And then for the back and the second lining, right sides together, and I will pin them across the top. And then I've switched my machine back to that cream colored thread, and I'll stitch across here and across here. Now matching up the front to the back and the linings to the linings right in the center, I'll turn the seam allowances down toward the stocking, so away from the lining, and I always pin those first. And I want to keep the stocking front on the front when I'm stitching so I can see what I'm doing. And then again, I'm going to match this up at the side here, turning the seam allowances down toward the stocking front and back, away from the lining. Then I'll just continue pinning all the way around, leaving an opening right here in the bottom of the lining. So all the way around. I am old school. I still like pins. You can use clips if you like. Now I'm going to stitch around the outside with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, starting right here, back stitch, go all the way around and come around to here and back stitch so that we have an opening for turning in the bottom of the lining. I've stitched around the outside. There's my opening. I'm going to trim the seam allowance, clip into. Now I'll turn it through the opening. I'm using a chopstick to reach all the way into the toe. I want to make sure that's nice and round. I want to make sure all of these edges are caught in the seam. I was worried about the W. The W is fine. This one's fine. The only thing I missed was the E on the chimney, but it's not too bad. So we're turned to the right side, and now I'm going to turn under the edges of that opening, and I'll just top stitch that closed. And now I'll turn the lining down into the stocking. That looks good, and now I'll press it flat. All we have to do is add a hanging loop. I'm going to use baker's twine and just stitch through right here. I know my neighbor's lawn service is working hard, so if you hear that little engine sound. So I'll tie it up. There we go. And then I'm going to add a bow. I'll cut off a nice long piece. My faithful glue gun is standing ready. This is probably the only thing that's glued on this, right? Okay. Let's see. That looks good. Trim the streamers and tie an overhand knot in each one of these streamers. And then I'm going to add a little smudge of glue to the center of the bow and then press the loops into that smudge of glue. There we go. And the stocking is done. Here are the companion pieces. The angel. Now this one I did the decorative stitches with white, and this one I did with red. I think they're both cute and fine, no problem, but I wish I would have done green. Thank you for watching my tutorial. If you're enjoying my videos, please like, share, and subscribe.